You know, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign will start on November 25th and run all the way up until the 10th of December. During the campaign period, civil society organizations and government will be working with communities on actions to end gender-based violence. Joining us now is Phinah Kodisang, CEO of Soul City. Phinah, good to have you. Thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. More than 3 decades, if you like, since activists founded the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. But if you look at the impact, I mean, violence against women and girls remains a widespread global issue. Yes, you've got some successes. We can count the hashtag #MeToo movement and some of the wins that we are seeing, for example, up against sex trafficking and so on and so forth. But almost every week, maybe almost every month, across the world, we are reporting on an experience of physical, sexual violence, mostly with intimate partners. What have you figured out? What is the barrier here?
Good afternoon, Thabo, and thanks for having me. I think, you know, the clip that you played earlier at the Empowerment Summit, you know, brings to light the issues. And I had the pleasure last year of being one of the speakers at this summit. And I was speaking to men around the issue of consent, right? And Tatekani puts it correctly that when they are being initiated as men, they are told, you know, you are now a man and this is how you treat a woman. You need to get respect from the woman. Your woman, by the way, there's the language that is used. You hear how men say, our women. You know, we need to protect our women. This, our women, that, right? So there's that cultural indoctrination that is very problematic and so entrenched that it plays itself out in intimate relationships, where by the time the law comes in, most of the time it's already late. So we see that a lot of the violation that happens, a lot of what we put under the umbrella of gender-based violence is actually intimate partner violence. Women are abused and raped by people they are in relationships with. It could be a brother, a father, a lover, an uncle, you know, a neighbor, but it's people that they know. It's hardly strangers who come from somewhere to violate. There is that component of, you know, stranger rape, but most of the violation, even when you listen to cases that have been, you know, promoted or had enough airtime in the media of women who have died in the hands of men, it's usually intimate partners. So we need to be, you know, doing a lot of undoing, let me put it that way rather. We need to do a lot of undoing of what has been done in the name of culture, in the name of religion, and sort of get to a point where men unlearn certain behaviors, you know, and they need to know that we are equals, you know, and that we exist equally covered, and all of us having the same rights, because the Constitution says human rights, and therefore every human being has to enjoy those rights. And that's where we find it, you know, very hard to navigate the space of intimate partner violence, because then they go to churches, and in churches they are told, you are the head, you know, the woman must respect you, must submit to you, without unpacking exactly what this means. Because the minute you just put it as a blanket statement and it's not unpacked to actually understand what does submission look like, and what is it exactly, you know, what is respect? Because if it's left for interpretation, you find that the men who now decide, for me it looks like this, and when I don't get that, I will now retaliate in this way. So we do have a serious norm problem in our country. Gender norms in this country are very violent. They speak of toxic masculinity. We have a lot of problems in our country.
So if our challenge, as you put it, is socio-cultural attitudes, right, or norms, as you put it, that we need to deal with, are there interventions that we are focusing on so far helping towards that agenda, right? For example, the president has his yearly summit on gender-based violence, and the things that are discussed there, for example, is reinforcing or resourcing the judiciary. One of the areas that is key. Another area is, of course, economic activities and so on and so forth. Focusing on that as opposed to dealing with those social, cultural tendencies, does it help, or do they meet each other somewhere?
They should meet each other somewhere, right? Because if you are listening to that clip, and I'm glad I got to hear that clip, it speaks to, I think he was inferring to the fact that men for 30 years have not been enabled, and I'm loosely, paraphrasing here. This is what I heard. Like, the role of a man has been reduced because the man in his nature or in his, socialization is supposed to be the protector, the provider. And when that is stripped of him, you sort of are leaving him with nothing but this toxicity. And that's why we then need to say, within the structural barriers, the socioeconomic issues that we are highlighting, what is it that men are hearing and doing? What is it that women are hearing and doing? And how do all these things that all of us are hearing and doing impact on us? And I'll give an example. So if the indoctrination of men is that you are the provider, if there's no job for that man to play that role, and the woman has the opportunity to be in a job and bring the resources home, it will not be received by this man who believes himself to be the provider. And therefore, there's a problem now that this woman can't come and be the man of the house because she brings in the money. And so we need to unlearn that in saying opportunities right now are open for everyone. So there's a likely chance that in a home, the woman might be the one who works and not the man. Yes. And that shouldn't be a problem, because at least in this home, then some resource to provide food for the children, the education of the children is being brought in. And we remove the binary roles that are there, where it's now the role of the woman to now cook, clean. Because if I'm at work as a woman and you are the man who's left at home, then do what I would have done if I'm the one at home. Cook. Let me find food cooked in the home. It shouldn't reduce you to being less of a man when you do that. And we fail, Thabo, honestly, to get that teaching in, where men see that, in fact, it's not a woman's role to be doing this. The man's role is not to provide, and the woman's role is not to clean and cook the food that the man provides. So all these are other things that the government is trying to do, efforts to give women economic empowerment, really are not going to work if the cultural norms and the gender norms are not shifting. Because you'll give these women jobs, you'll help them to start businesses, but the environment will not be accepting of this power or empowerment that women are receiving based on the current policies that are there. So they must balance each other and find each other and converge somewhere.
If we are to have strong and lasting outcomes, really, of these campaigns, 16 Days of Activism, what should we do this year? We are realizing that, of course, this is a social-cultural question that needs to be dealt with. It's a national health crisis. The president would have outlined it as that. It's also an economic challenge. So if we are to do justice to this 16 days, what should we be focusing on?
We start by removing the focus on the 16 days, because it should be the focus from day one of the year to the last day of the year. So 365 days of the year should be focused on what are we doing, what are we resolving this time, instead of focusing on the 16 days. And you will see, as it has been the trend over the years, that when it's like the beginning of the 16 days is where we see an escalation of these violations, of the abuse, as if the system, the patriarchal system, says to you, we are going to show you that there's nothing you can do to change the status quo. Every year when it's the beginning of the 16 days, we hear reports of gruesome crimes committed against children, women of this country. And that is something that we need to be careful of, to say, let's not zoom in on the 16 days where everybody's agenda is looking at the scourge of gender-based violence. And after the 10th of December, we go back to normal until next year, 25th November. That is how we get ourselves into this problem that doesn't go away, because we are only focusing on it when it suits us, because it's everybody's time to speak about gender-based violence globally, but every other day we are doing other things.